Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talk Politics. I'm Angus,
I'm Anna.
and today is episode 4. Now, should we get straight into it?
We'll get straight into it from where we left off on last week. Angus, would you like to start?
Yes. So, Labour, your sitcom continues. Your drama, your version of EastEnders continues on, and all of those that support Labour, once again, are despairing for anything and everything happening with the Labour Party. Now, what has happened differently? Some surprises, some not surprises. A reasonable surprise for a few, not surprise for many, is where Streeting has now resigned. He's resigned as Health Secretary. Now, most people who do A-level politics know that he is considered a big beast within Starmer's cabinet. Now, for those of you who don't know or do A-levels and should know, is that a big beast is what is considered a member of one's cabinet, such as Boris Johnson in Theresa May's cabinet 2019, not 2019, 2015. And essentially, they have their own huge backing within their own party, and they usually disagree quite heavily with the main prime minister. But because of how large they are, they can't afford, because of the conventions like, collective responsibility within the cabinet, etc. The prime minister can't afford to have this big beast outside of the cabinet, because therefore they wouldn't be under jurisdiction or under the convention of collective responsibility, and they'd be able to say what they say. So having Wes Streeting in the cabinet. So for most, it's not a surprise. Some it is a surprise that he ended up resigning after showing some silence. Definitely took him a while, wouldn't you say, to come up with this idea, or to come to the conclusion that he should leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think because, as we all know, the King's speech was highly overshadowed last week, quite unusually, by the little coffee meeting, as called, that took place before the King's speech. Yeah. And in that 20 minutes, I think there would have been something about Wes Streeting perhaps giving some warning to the Prime Minister that he was resigning. Because, in his resignation letter, he said he thought it was unfit to serve in a government whose leadership he no longer agreed with. It was quite a democratic and diplomatic letter.
It was a falling out, wasn't it?
It was a diplomatic letter.
Yeah, but as it goes, usually the first person to leave in a cabinet isn't the one that ends up taking the reins as a result. Although we did see that with Boris, but usually the convention is whoever stabs the person in the back does not receive the goblet by the end of it.
But what's interesting to see is how the rest of the cabinet, there's not been a string of cabinet resignations following.
With the set, I took great care and attention with that.
Yeah, but like I was saying, there's a thing where sometimes if the leadership's really unstable and you can tell there's been disagreements, like there's a huge disagreement. We saw with, I think it was Sunak and Javid resigning from Johnson's cabinet within 2 minutes apart of each other. With this, we haven't seen this. That David Lammy and other members of the cabinet are rallying around Starmer, and unusually, Wes Streeting has been the only prominent cabinet minister to really resign so far.
Yeah, so that's probably the most surprising part. Is that it has been Streeting to leave. Now, before he did leave, there was a question of whether he would challenge directly. And so basically within the Labour Party, there's a certain way that things when it comes to taking down leaders. As I think we said last week, the Tories are usually much more inclined to kick out their own leaders when they're not doing a very good job. It's very rare for Labour to be able to do that. And essentially the way that the system that works in Labour is that they have to get over a quarter or just over a quarter of total Labour MPs within power to sign a petition or pledge their allegiance or whatever with whoever is running to then trigger a leadership battle. The number for this particular government was 81. Reportedly, Streeting got 80, so he was only one away from being able to trigger a leadership vote. Now he has resigned, and Anna, my co-host, will get into all of the stuff about Andy Burnham and Streeting pledging his support for Andy Burnham. But outside of that, he has also pledged his own desire to run for office as well. So depending on how many of those 80 MPs now defect over to Burnham or to Angela Rayner, it leaves a lot to be desired. But I don't think Streeting is a very prominent figure right now in the running. I think it's definitely Burnham, and whether he can even win his seat. But obviously that will be Anna's segment later. In terms of Angela Rayner, there's whispers that she will try to get power. There's whispers that she'll trigger a leadership. Now, as far as within the party goes, Rayner's a little further left than Starmer. Streeting's further right in terms of Labour, not further right in terms of the whole political spectrum, but right in terms of Labour. So neither of which are in the centralist part of Starmer. I think Rayner would have more of a chance, don't you think?
I think the thing is, she's had her tax affairs cleared now, which came on the same day that Wes Streeting resigned, I think. It was always a bit like, is Angela Rayner putting her hat in the ring now? I think for her, and this goes against her, she's a truly, truly working class woman, unlike some of the other members of the party. I think that will go against us in some way.
You think?
I think there will be an attitude that goes against her in that way. And also, I think even though she says she's had her tax affairs sorted, the public is still a bit hurt. But I do think she stands a potential chance. I think her throwing the hat in the ring is reasonable. I think, it's valid that she wants to attempt it. So, yeah. Are you happy for me to move on to Burnham? Or have you got any more notes to add on?
There was just one more thing about the Starmer's standpoint. Those of you who expect him to leave, I imagine he probably will. There are multiple different whispers, multiple different sources saying different things, and they're mostly saying two. One of them is that he will stand, and he will stand his ground, and he will attempt to remain in position as power. Now, Labour, the MPs seem to be quiet right now, MPs in general. So whether that is a viable standpoint for him to be able to be successful at is a different question. So that's one of the sides. And the other side is that he will resign quickly and soon, and also set a timetable for him leaving Parliament, as May did, in terms of assuring smooth transition of power, which I imagine the type of person that he is, I think is more likely than not. Right now, he does seem to, after the local elections, he came out and he said, I have an obligation to lead this country, and that is what we shall do. He and David Lammy and people around him are very much of the position that their job now is to continue running the country. We're in such an awkward position right now with the cost of living and the division within politics and oil crisis and foreign wars and health and stuff like that, problem with the NHS. I'm inclined, and I want this to be open for a debate, but I'm inclined to believe that now is not the time to change leaders. And I think timetable is the right thing to do. And I think this isn't a call in support of Starmer, but it's a call for a timetable of separation and a timetable of changeover to be the correct thing to do because of how precarious things are. And I had people around us when I was talking to other people earlier today about it, and they said, when is a good time to change over leaders? And it changed my standpoint. My first standpoint is that they shouldn't change leaders because, the Labour Party is doing well, the economy is growing. For those of you who think illegal immigration is a large problem, which, it could or it could not be, it's down by 2/3 via sources from the BBC, I think. So, in the grand scheme of things, the Labour Party isn't doing a terrible job. Of course, the leadership and the running of the party is in dire situation right now, which does need to change. But I think, in my personal view, I think a timetable is the best thing for the Labour Party right now. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree with the timetabling. I do think there needs to be an orderly change of leader. But I think Starmer is, there's obviously faults in what he's done with some of his budgeting and stuff. Obviously, freezing the tax thresholds, that's not gone down well in his budget, which was put out by Rachel Reeves. But he is a prime minister, I think, who has also been a victim of context and circumstance surrounding the rest of the world. I think he has had an unfortunate set of events, unfortunately. Some of them his own making, some of them not so much in his sphere of influence. It would be interesting to see, because it's just a bit unfortunate. He's had really terrible events. He's had the Iran war kickoff. His government's had to very carefully cater to the taste of Donald Trump. I don't think it's entirely his fault, but obviously some of it is the making of his government and his leadership. But it's just very turbulent, and I think external effects...
It's a mixture of little problems becoming a cascading problem, isn't it?
It all kind of mishmashes into a big problem, I think, for him. Should I move on to my segment about Burnham?
Of course.
Right, for those of you who don't know, I think it was earlier this week, I can't remember, it came such a surprise to me.
Really?
No, we were kind of debating whether it was a good time for Josh Simon, so the Labour MP for Makerfield, to stand down to allow Burnham to stand in an election. And for me, I didn't suspect this happening because there's so much risk of Reform taking the seat right now. No Labour safe seat is a safe seat. So I was wondering if they would even go for the risk.
It's 80% likely based off of the stats from Saturday, I think. So 2 days ago, it was Saturday the 16th. Based off those stats on that particular day, it was 80% chance of Reform winning the seat, 17% Labour winning the seat, and then 0% Conservative, 0% Green, I think, like 2% Lib Dem. Yeah, I think
it did come as a surprise to me. I mean, for some people, I don't know if it came as a surprise to you, probably less so, but it did shock me quite a bit that they'd take this gamble.
It didn't shock me that they would. It didn't shock me that Burnham was going to try and get back into Parliament. Now, for those of you who don't know, I think I hope that Anna will explain backstory to Burnham and whatever, which can be very confusing. But I think I wasn't surprised that he was going to try and make his way into Parliament. I was just surprised that he was going to try and make his way into Parliament into such a volatile seat.
So, for some context, Andy Burnham is a Labour Party member at the moment. He's not a member of Parliament, so I'm going to say Labour Party member. He stood for leadership of the Labour Party twice and lost to Corbyn, and I think the other one was Miliband. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that.
It was Ed Miliband.
Ed Miliband. He is currently serving as the Mayor of Manchester, where he is loved and actually coined the King of the North. He is truly seen.
Game of Thrones fans.
Game of Thrones fans out there, you'll get the reference. I think what's interesting is Andy Burnham is seen as a man of the people. He is really seen as a pioneer of the working class. And I was watching some interviews kind of on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all of that. And it was a case of many Reform voters who were interviewed said Andy Burnham coming into, trying to get back into the seat changes everything for them.
Really?
Some Reform voters would switch back to Andy Burnham because they truly see him as man of the people, working class, somebody who's really helped Manchester, develop into a city that's nicer than what Manchester was before. So some context on Makerfield, the constituency which Andy Burnham is trying to get elected in. It is on the edge of Manchester, which is a benefit for Burnham because he's already popular. But Labour currently only holds a majority of about 5,000 seats, which sounds like a lot. It's not. It is not a big majority. And unfortunately, recently in the council elections in Makerfield, Reform had over, I think, 50% of the council.
Really?
Now, the reason this by-election is so important, and Reform has said they will throw everything at
the
that
local
seat.
elections?
Yeah. Yeah, this one. For the by-election, Reform is going to throw everything at this as well. Because Burnham is seen as the only man who can actually bring a challenge to Nigel Farage. So if Burnham gets in, it's going to create a really tough time for Farage. So basically, this by-election is a case of Reform trying to keep out the biggest threat to their party. And the election is suspected to take place on 18th of June. Now, the interesting one with this is that if Andy Burnham wins, he's almost guaranteed to get number 10.
Yeah.
He's almost guaranteed to get Prime Minister.
That's very safe to say.
But if he loses and the seat will either go to, I suspect Reform, I don't think it will go to the Greens.
So embarrassing for Labour.
Not only for Labour, given his two previous unsuccessful attempts, I think it will be just game over for his leadership.
Well, he's no longer
attempts.
mayor, is he?
He's no longer.
And I don't think. I mean, I don't know how Manchester would reply to that. I wouldn't have much trust in a man who leaves to go be Prime Minister and comes back with his tail between his legs.
And that's what I think some of the others are saying as well. There's some people who dislike Andy Burnham or kind of have an opinion on Andy Burnham at the moment is that he's acting a bit entitled is what I've heard some of the stuff around him is that he's acting like he's almost guaranteed this seat. And some people feel a little bit annoyed that this feels like, it's just a guaranteed one-way path into number 10 for Burnham. Which what do you think of the attitude around that? It's a difficult one.
I think he's mainly riding a lot of the quiet support from Labour members and Labour Party members. As we said earlier, there hasn't been much uproar from backbenchers and other cabinet ministers alike. But I think quietly a lot of them are hoping that Burnham can make his way in. Because as you say, he ran twice, so he knows the Labour Party well, and he knows how to run. And he missed out on both of them, but he has been mayor of a very, very hard Labour city for a while. He's kept a lot of their vote, almost entirely all of their vote, and he's done a very good, popular job in Manchester. I think he'll very easily see a lot of support coming from the people, at being seen the king of the north. Maybe he can restore a lot of that red wall that seems to have been crumbling in recent local elections. And I think this by-election is really a chance for the whole Labour Party as a whole to sort of get pep in their step. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the morale right now in the Labour Party is, obviously it's low. It's very low, significantly lower than you'd wish for a legitimate party in our government. And so I think if Burnham was to get in, it would certainly be a significant morale boost for many. Obviously not the stormtroopers or anything, but in terms of the attitude around it, I think Burnham, as much as he wants to, I think he's expecting, like you said, entitled, he's expecting to become Prime Minister. I think based off of his last 2 leadership challenges, he definitely has an idea of what he wants to achieve as Prime Minister. So that's not concerning, because he actually has experience in pledging and manifestos, and not just being a cabinet minister on the likes of, Streeting and Rayner. So he knows what it's like to try and get people behind him. He knows what it's like to be an out-and-out leader. And so I think if there was to be anybody to fix the problem, because the problem with the Labour Party, as we said, the problem with the Labour Party is leadership. It's the fact that their leadership seems to be so out of, complete, just in disarray. I think Burnham has the ability to be able to get Manchester certainly behind him, one of Labour's absolute and utter strongholds. And I think he has such a great platform to be able to rally the party behind it. So I think the attitude is somewhat grounded, what I'm trying to get at.
I think you have a point there, but we will have to see how it plays out. And unfortunately, we won't be able to get to see how it plays out till June, which is quite unfortunate.
Yeah, take a while. So, Reform's popularity is dropping, has consistently. So maybe even by then it might be closer to 60-40 or 50-50.
And on to our little international segment of the week. Of course, I mentioned this last week, Xi and Trump's summit in Beijing.
Yes, very important.
So, if you'd start on maybe just a bit on what came of the meeting, which is...
Yeah. So as Anna said and correctly predicted last week, we didn't see anything coming out of it. We didn't see any major deals or anything coming out of it. But what we hoped, me, Anna, producer Aidan, who was guesting on the podcast that week, we all hoped that what came out of it would be some sort of semblance of peacetime or cooperation, especially between China and America, through things like the Iran war and etc. I think Trump does need someone as strong, if not stronger, than him economically, diplomatically, to stand up to him and show him what's what, of course in a peaceful way. And I think we somewhat got that.
It wasn't going to be a breakthrough of any kind, but for the moment it seems to have reduced tensions.
Exactly.
Thankfully.
Which is what we expected. And, idealistically, obviously everybody goes in, it's like, he's going to come out of this and the Strait of Hormuz is going to be open and China and America going to have regular trade. He's going to knock on Downing Street, and him and Starmer are going to have a big embrace, and Britain and America are going to be best buds, bed buddies for centuries. The ideal situation was that, but we didn't get that, but we got what we expected. I think we got exactly what we expected, or what we hoped, in terms of our realistic.
But it's one step forwards, and I think we're all grateful for that. A little itinerary of the trip: they visited the Temple of Heaven, which is rarely visited by other leaders. It's very much used as a diplomatic visiting area, and it is beautiful. And I truly think Trump did appreciate some of the beauty he saw in China. Also, interestingly enough, and I go on about this because I think food can be such an important thing in terms of diplomacy and international relations. I think I'm very interested in kind of the social, sociology kind of side of diplomacy and stuff. The menu was Peking duck. So if those of you don't know, and I'm going on a little digression here, it's little pancakes.
I've got one after you, don't worry. I've got one in the old plan up here.
The digression, another digression. We have a little pancake. You have sliced cucumber, sliced spring onion with crispy duck and some hoisin sauce. And that's a very...
Sounds lovely.
I mean, if any of you know Chinese food, it is kind of like national dish. There was also beef ribs for Trump's preference of well-done steak, which I think food is so important. I mean, when you're trying to ease tensions, thing really, starts with being full and a happy stomach, because I know I get pretty hangry when I don't have nice food. It is a love language. Interestingly enough, there's clips on videos of a Chinese translator, which unfortunately wasn't cut out a video of anything, of the translator saying that Trump wanted a Diet Coke because there didn't seem to be a Diet Coke on the menu, which I just find that a little bit amusing. But you know what? A man can love his Diet Coke. I know plenty of people out there who love his Diet Coke.
I like Diet Coke.
That's
Pepsi Max Cherry.
Ooh, what's your digression? I'm interested to hear now.
Eurovision, everyone. Eurovision happened on Saturday, and the finale of SNL UK, which I implore you to go and watch because I really wanted to get renewed for a third season. Season 2 coming, but obviously every show nowadays needs a viewer count to be able to sustain itself. Anyway, Eurovision happened. Oh my god, guys, we came last. Britain came last, I'm pretty sure. We had 1 point. Yeah, of course we came last. We've come last like every year for the past 4 years. Obviously, I could digress again and talk about why I think we keep losing. But guys, I swear it does have political relevance to the podcast. I genuinely swear, okay? You've got to hear me out here. Israel were allowed to compete. There's lots of controversy behind that. Countries like Spain, Germany, I think, all of different countries, upwards of almost 10, dropped out of the competition completely, this European competition, which used to span almost every single European country. And both Germany and Spain, if I have my facts correctly. But the fact is that Israel were allowed to compete. And I wanted to have a little debate quickly in the last 10 minutes. I think this might be our last piece of news.
I'm going to have to do this with my limited Eurovision knowledge, guys, so this could be interesting.
I know the debate is relevant to Israel and whether they should compete.
Yeah.
Basically, the question is, Russia was kicked out.
Yes.
Russia was kicked out. They weren't allowed to compete. And Eurovision allowed Israel to compete and have allowed Israel to compete. And obviously, everyone's left and there's so much controversy surrounding it. And it is political. It is. So I just wanted to ask for your opinion. I believe that until it's a European competition, so until the EU or the UN successfully rules and adequately rules that Israel have a legitimate right to do what they are doing, exactly what they are doing, I don't think they should compete. Because that's what they did for Russia. They determined that they didn't have democratic or international right to be able to do what they did in Ukraine. Almost every single person in the UN outside of the international body itself, so diplomats in and around, would suggest that they do not think Israel has a legitimate right to do what they are doing. So I wanted to ask for your opinion whether for an international competition like Eurovision, is it relevant to be political in that sense, or should we be political in that sense?
I truly wish things like sports and music, I wish it could transcend politics. For me, the ideal world would be, okay, the people who do these talented things, like people who have that talent for singing, sports, whatever, it's the people who have that talent, not the government. And but obviously we are not living in an ideal world, and unfortunately there can't be that separation. I wish sports and music wasn't political because it's the people, not the government. Obviously, the government funds all of it and stuff and allows them to go compete. But at the end of the day, it's the people who have that talent. Would there's hypocrisy there? A little bit. I do think there's a bit of hypocrisy there. And I think there needs to be more, well, this is the rule.
Consistency.
Yeah. What I find annoying is the lack of consistency around it. And it's the same case. I mean, I think Iran was still allowed to compete in the World Cup, but then they said no. So I guess there's a bit of consistency there. Trump still offered the Iranians to come compete in the football. Obviously, the Iranians are rightly so quite annoyed that their country's been bombed and said, no, we're not competing in the World Cup. But it's
difficult to say, isn't it? Because there's so much grey area around Israel. And as much as there's a clear line between Russia, Ukraine, and wrong, certainly amongst generation, there is debate. Older generations are more likely to be a lot more sympathetic towards Israel because they lived through the significant eras of Hamas consistently acting as a terrorist organization. But I'm specifically talking about the way that they've handled the situation, not the fact that they've done what they've done, but the way that they've done it. And I just don't think and you can see it with the amount of people that have dropped out.
Yeah.
You didn't see anybody drop out when Russia wasn't allowed to compete. People are dropping out because Israel, and a lot of people are dropping out because whole countries, not just contestants, because these contestants are representing the countries, and they've all dropped out. Most of them have dropped out. Around 10 have dropped out. I just think there needs to be some kind of conversation there. And they did have a conversation, and they declared that Israel should stay in the competition. But I think because it's so relevant in a lot of Europeans' lives, that in order. And yeah, we don't live in an ideal world. Music and art and sport are intertwined with politics usually. You had it in the Qatar World Cup where people wore those armbands for the LGBTQ, and then they were told not to wear them anymore, and there was all that controversy. I think at some point, you cut off the arm to save the body. Perhaps we do need to separate countries heavily involved in international debate around their actions. Israel, I think whether you think they have a right or not to do what they're doing, I think they should be kicked out anyway. Because to be able to separate completely a competition of music from politics, especially when the public are free to be able to vote the way that they feel, I think it's only right. Whether you think they are or are not in the wrong, I think they should.
Yeah, I wish I watched more Eurovision so I could speak a little bit more. I've never watched Eurovision.
It's very good. I watched, I was Oliver backstage for our junior show, so I didn't get to watch it live, but I watched a couple of the clips, guys.
Nice.
But unfortunately, we came last. Not nil point though. We usually get nil point. Anyway,
I think that will probably be about it for today's
episode. Do you have
episode.
Anything else to say?
I think that's actually just it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for listening to episode 4, guys. Hope you enjoy. Please remember to like and subscribe because it means a lot. Honestly, all the support would be so valuable. We love doing this.
And our Instagram Talk Politics for you. Honestly, we got 34 subscribers as of now, so we don't get paid for it. So yeah, as Anna says, we love doing it, and we really like to keep doing it. So please like and subscribe, and join the Instagram, and message us any advice or anything that you have, or anything that you want us to cover during the week. I was thinking the other day, I was like, this would be really cool if they could give us pointers or anything on stuff they wanted us to talk about. We've been getting lots of the whole thing is about educating the youth and getting them involved in politics. So anything we can do to help that is, something we want to do. So please like and subscribe. Please send this around to people who don't know about the podcast that you think could benefit from the podcast. Join the Instagram and everything. We might be posting shorts if I can work out how to edit that. But honestly, I'm a new editor. So the YouTube's probably as far as it's going to go for now until I can, figure life out. But anyways, that was episode 4. Thank you so much, guys.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.